Unplug. So if you think about, if you go and buy a highly efficient refrigerator and you stick that in your kitchen, you take the old one and you stick it in the basement and you plug it in there, you've just increased your emissions from refrigeration by 50%, because you've got this one that's 50%, uses only half the electricity, but this one is still using all the electricity. So if you've got an underutilized fridge or freezer, unplug it. If you've got, a number of things, just use energy just by being plugged in, your TV or your cell phone charger, all these things, unplug them if you can. Put a power strip and turn it off so that when you're not using it. Ask for an energy audit. You can call up Reading Light, or if you're Keyspan customers, call them up and say, hey, can you come in and take a look? And they'll come in and they'll do things like, they might recommend a programmable thermostat. They'll give you light bulbs. They'll help insulate your pipes or a door or a window. They'll tell you about the things that you could do, sort of the low-hanging fruit, what kind of payback you'd get, and it's free. It's not free, but you don't pay the cost. That's the way they say it. Somebody else, that gets paid for out of our energy bills. So take advantage of that.
And you can have them come more than once.
You can have them come more than once. If it's every month, they'll start to catch on eventually. But I've had them come a couple of times. Buy green power. What do I mean by that? Obviously, the electrons that come into our house, they're electrons. You can't tell the difference. But it turns out that you can go out and you can buy wind power. You can buy the greenness from a wind farm in Pennsylvania or Massachusetts or Maine or New York. You can buy that. In fact, through Reading Light, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Green Choice program. This was started about a year and a half ago, I think. And this is great. Reading, there aren't many municipal utilities that are doing this. This allows you to pay a little bit extra on your utility bill and get some greenness that you sort of overlay on the regular power. So you clean up the carbon emissions from your electricity usage. The other option is obviously making your own. Put solar panels on your roof if you can. Put a wind turbine on. That's a little harder. North Reading, the resource isn't great, and your neighbors might complain. So that's why buying green power may be a better option. Buy local when you're looking at the carbon impact of your life, your carbon footprint. Part of it is what are you eating? Where is it coming from? Is it coming from Western Massachusetts, or is it coming from South America? So think about that when you're making your decisions. If you can do a farmer's market, that's a great option. There are farms around the area, so buy there. Same thing when you're making decisions about what kind of wood you're going to use for your deck. You can look for wood that's been sustainably harvested or harvested in some sort of certified manner to have a reduced impact. There's something called the Forest Stewardship Council that will certify wood. So look for things like that. And number 10, get active. Tell your elected representatives that you care about carbon, that it's something that you're watching how they vote when it comes to renewable energy, when it comes to energy efficiency, when it comes to fuel economy standards, when it comes to carbon and climate change legislation. That's probably the biggest issue, biggest piece on there. Before I finish up, I just want to let you know, so there are some of these materials on the back, before I open up for questions. There are executive summaries of this study. Again, I recommend those. There's the Massachusetts summary. It's just 6 pages. It's an easy read. I want to read, before I go to my final slide, I want to read something from a magazine I got. This is an excerpt from a documentary by Ken Burns about World War II. Some of you remember the pre-1939 era, 1941, and remember what happened in 1941 and how the U.S. responded. Here's what the documentary says. In 1941, more than 3 million cars were manufactured in the United States. Only 139 more were made during the entire war. Instead, Chrysler made fuselages, General Motors made airplane engines, guns, trucks, and tanks. Packard made Rolls-Royce engines for the British Air Force. And at the vast Willow Run plant in Ypsilanti, Michigan, the Ford Motor Company performed something like a miracle 24 hours a day. The average Ford car had some 15,000 parts. The B-24 Liberator long-range bomber they produced for the war effort had 1,550,000 parts. One such plane came off the line every 63 minutes. You know that we've faced challenges before. You know that we can do this. You know that we have the tools at our disposal. What we need is the will. We need the market drivers. We need the political climate. We need all of us saying, hey, let's do something about this. Let's get our act together. Let's not shoot for that lower emissions path. Let's shoot for much lower than that. We can do that as a nation. We can do that as a region. If you think about meeting the climate challenge, what I hope is clear from tonight, the challenge is serious, not just for people in far-off countries, not just for polar bears. The challenge is serious for us. And that our choices make a difference. If you look at that lower emission scenario, you look at that higher emission scenario, we know that those two paths lead to vastly different outcomes. We know that our choices, in terms of which path we follow, make a real difference. We also know that our choices make a difference. I hope that's clear. That here in the Northeast, we're a big part of the problem. We are a big problem. We will be a big part of the solution. In terms of our financial innovation, in terms of our technology, in terms of our policy, in terms of our people, that we can be a piece of this. We also understand, because of the lag in the climate system, that the time to act is now. You have the power. Thank you very much. I'd like to open it up for questions.
I have a comment.
Sure, comments are fine.
I was reading the Yankee magazine today. It talked about Harrisika in Freeport, Maine, and how they greened it, if you will. And one of them is they reduced their rubbish from 40 yards of weight to 4. They changed all the light bulbs, 800 light bulbs to those curly-hue ones. I can't remember the fluorescent, right? And they listed all the things that they had done just to make the place better. And it was, most of the things we could have done ourselves individually, you know? It was very interesting.
And this was them as a town getting together?
No, this was the Harrisika Inn.
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. You know, there are a number of initiatives happening. Obviously, there are a number of companies that are getting serious about this, that are doing things, again, because of the environment, but also because of the economics. It's no surprise that if a business spends less on energy, it's actually good for business. If it insulates better, if it reduces its packaging, this works. And it's also green is good, so this is helpful for their business. But you look, so it's happening at the level of households, it's happening at the level of companies, institutions, more and more institutions, hospitals or universities are committing to reducing their carbon footprint. Again, it's good for them. Also communities, if you look, does anybody know about so Reading has joined what's called the Cities for Climate Protection movement. They started this, I think they joined about 2 years ago. What this is, it's a 5-step program, I think. The first is to sort of take an inventory of their global warming pollution. What's coming from their businesses and their homes and their government buildings. So first take a look at it, then set a goal for where they want to be, 10% below 1990 by the year 2010. And then develop a plan to work toward that goal, then work toward that goal, and then monitor. So it's a 5-step program. We could certainly be doing something like that here in North Reading. That's part of we've got obviously we've got groups that are working on this, whether it's the folks who are trying to protect our green spaces and the implications that trees have for our climate footprint. It's the Recycling Committee, the Energy Study Committee, again, driven by environment and economics. So there's a lot that could be happening at the local level, and that's certainly, anybody wants to take that on, I'm with you.
You seem to be well connected into this area. Well, the climate changes and what we need to do in order to get to a more neutral level playing field around increasing the emissions and whatnot. From a political point of view, is there the wherewithal there within the state government to really embrace those? Because in Germany there are all kinds of tax incentives for solar, photovoltaic, and all those kind of things. Here in Massachusetts, it's minuscule. The payback for getting to really renewable energy sources for a common homeowner, you're talking $30,000 for photovoltaic. I'm not even talking wind. For photovoltaic, to put on your house to get off the grid.
Right.
So, and then if you get a tax incentive from the Commonwealth of Mass, it amounts to what, $600-700 for spending $30,000-$40,000. And the payback is 20 years, 25 years.
Right.
It's not economically feasible, given what's going on in our state government around supporting these efforts.
Right, so I'll say a couple responses to that. One is that there is this renewable energy trust. We don't pay into it, but customers of NSTAR and National Grid and Western Mass Electric pay into this fund. And we actually, if the legislation that's on Beacon Hill right now passes, we will have the option as a community, as the Reading Light community, to actually start paying into that fund and be able to tap into it. The state government in January announced what they're calling the Commonwealth Solar Initiative. It's a $68 million initiative, not new money. It's some of the funding from that trust and others to try to get tens of megawatts of solar electric installed in Massachusetts. We have manufacturing right here in Marlborough and in Billerica, so we have a vested interest in actually seeing that. You don't think of Massachusetts as a sunny state, but yes, you're right to point to Germany. Germany is the largest market for solar in the world. If you look at how much sun Germany gets, southern Germany, that's what I heard a friend who works at one of the solar companies, founded one of these solar companies, say, southern Germany has about as much sun as Massachusetts. Northern Germany has about as much sun as my basement. So it's not the technical, it is the political will. You're exactly right about that. We could do that here. From a personal standpoint, what I would recommend is that you lead with energy efficiency, then you go with solar hot water, because I put solar hot water in August, and you can get $1,500 back from Keyspan, you get $2,000 back from the federal government, you get $1,000 back, I think, on your state taxes. And, so that system, which costs close to $10,000, is suddenly less than half that. And that will pay for itself. So you want to start with the low-hanging fruit. Solar electric technology is great,
I agree with 100% what you're saying. Some of the, some of these areas of the community, they have restrictive covenants. You can't put those kind of things in those. And the Federal Communications Act, one of the Federal Communications Acts, prohibited a lot of those restrictive covenants from limiting you of putting an antenna on your roof to get television reception. Is there any kind of legislation that you're aware of that will sort of remove those restrictive covenants for people that are trying to put energy efficient devices on their homes in order to achieve the savings and cut down the emissions?
I don't know of any. What there is in this legislation is other things that would give you an incentive. For example, allow you to sell your power. So you put it on your roof, you sell it to the utility at the same price that you buy it for. So it's called net metering. But the covenants are probably a local issue and something that we, the people, are going to have to change.
The net metering you can do today, but you pay 4 cents a watt coming in, and going back out, they give you half a penny.
No, that's changed. No, in Massachusetts, actually, what the legislation would do would be to raise that from 60 kilowatts to 2 megawatts.
Okay.
Now, that's bigger than any of us is going to need, except if we band together, because what it will allow is neighborhoods to get together, maybe put in a wind turbine, probably not in North Reading because of the resources, but put in a wind turbine together as a neighborhood, and then all benefit at retail rates from the electricity that's produced. So there is change happening, but yes, there's more that needs to happen.
I have one other question, then I'm going to shut up. Are you aware of any kind of home in the future that any of the college universities are working on today that implement thin film or wind, or all the way from here's the house, zero emissions, completely energy efficient, off the grid, that sort of is a home of the future, if you will, where people can take a look at and maybe get ideas from on how to...
There's an annual competition called the Solar Decathlon that the universities get together, each build these highly efficient houses with solar, and then they go and they actually assemble them on the National Mall in DC, and they have a competition. So you can find information about that. Here, Tufts, I think, has done a fair amount of work there. I know a Tufts professor who has a zero energy home that he's just built out in western Massachusetts that has solar electric and solar hot water on the roof and uses a geothermal heat pump. So it takes the heat from the ground, where it's a constant 50 degrees, and uses that for all his heating and cooling. So
I lied, I have one more question.
Okay, go ahead.
Anybody that you're aware of that's doing any kind of growing crystals for capturing ambient motion and converting that into energy?
No. So the fuel